Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone that's been tuning in and joining in on the conversations in regards to the videos that we've posted, particularly in reference to properties that we've been talking about, because that in particular is really important for everyone to get their head around. And it's a reason why I'm trying to provide a broad perspective and a broad base of different types of properties that I think might be at least interesting to those people that might be thinking about coming here. But looking at the conversations that we're having online, the thing that's occurred to me is that I haven't really spoken too specifically about exactly where we are in the country. And when you don't speak in specifics, some things can get lost in the detail. And in some of the conversations, there's been references to price points in Paraguay, and that some of the price points that I've spoken about, some of the properties that I've looked at, some comments have been along the lines of, well, you can get things far cheaper in Paraguay. That may be so, but like any country, when you're talking about a country, things are different in one part than what they may be in another. And I haven't really spoken about the department we're in and why we're actually here and how that relates to the views I have about properties, including their price points and other details. So I had been intending to do that video for quite some time. I've still been doing some research in regards to that, but I thought I should just fast track it just so that people can understand where we are in Paraguay, why we're here, why we think it's the best place to be for us and others perhaps. And I think then we can have a conversation about properties, price points and where things are in that regard. So we're in the department of Cordillera. When we arrived to Paraguay, we had fulfilled our first objective, and that was we identified a country that we really wanted to explore the option of living in permanently. So the next objective was then to find the location within that country that really suited our objectives and ticked the boxes. And it just so happened that almost immediately upon arriving, we travelled to this department and we found that it did tick the boxes that we required. And it did so in a way that really allowed us to quickly rule out even considering other parts of the country, because there are some things for us that were really not negotiable, and when you put a number of those together, we believe they can only really be found in this department and perhaps one other. We wanted it to be within reasonable vicinity of Asuncion. We have come a long way around this world. We started in Guatemala, spent time in Nicaragua and travelled in between. So we've already come a long way. And we really did not want to then go a further long way and live in a remote part of the world. For us, it was just a bridge too far. We really value being within reasonable proximity of the capital city. And in a place like Paraguay, I think it has extra appeal and utility, because outside of Asuncion, things get sometimes pretty sketchy, hard to find. And depending on what you're talking about, whether it's medical care or you need to buy something or you need to access a service, we're not infrequently attending Asuncion, either by necessity or choice. It is very beneficial for us to be within an hour and a half or less in a car to Asuncion. And as we think towards our future, as the kids get towards higher education, Asuncion provides potential opportunities that would be difficult to find in other parts of the country. And if we ever need urgent healthcare or anything like that, well, I think that you'd be in a good place if you were in reasonable shooting distance to the capital. So proximity to Asuncion was very high on our list, and this department ticked that box. The second thing that was very important to us was that we wanted to live in an area that had minimal mass cropping. We value clean food, clean crops. that can be an issue in very many parts of Paraguay. Thankfully, because this department is hilly and rocky and pretty inhospitable to a mass crop situation, there's minimal activity here in that regard. So that was a very big box that was very clearly ticked. Just check out the link below. There's a reference there that you can go to and search for yourself. But as you'll see, this department fares very well when it comes to a minimal amount of the sort of activities that might contribute to concerns about the purity of the soil and the water systems activities. Hola! Hey! I don't know who that was. Another thing that we were really looking for was a compact department. By compact, we mean we just didn't want it to be like spread out to the extent that we're having to travel vast distances just to get from one location to the next. We wanted to be in a department where it was very interesting, diverse, and we could scoot over here, scoot over there, and briskly be where we wanted to be at any time. Thankfully, this department is quite a condensed place in terms of the towns and the places that we would want to hang out. So it's really cool in that regard. There's a lot of nice towns that are in short distance by car or motorbike, and it's something that we really value because there's a number of reasons why you probably want to limit the amount of time that you're spending on a Paraguayan road. But the Paraguayan roads here are actually better than I think in some other parts of the country. But nonetheless, it is nice not to have to travel vast distances to get from one place to the next. And that's something that we very much found here in this department. It's a very convenient department, and we get around to the places we want to get around to in really no time at all. And our social circle is really quite condensed for that reason. So that's really cool, and we value that. Another thing that we're looking for ideally in the place where we settled was a feeling that it was valued by the country. In any country you live in, you can go to parts of the country and you can just see that apart from the people that live there, perhaps nobody really thinks too much about the place. And I imagine Paraguay is probably not all that different. Well, in this department, there is the township of Qroo, the spiritual heart of the country. And you can really feel that in terms of the way that it is attended and supported, and also the way it's kept. Even though I'm walking along quite a ratty road here, in general, the infrastructure in Qroo is really quite good. It's excellent, actually. And that's really a testament to the fact that the government obviously values it. And the upkeep of this town is really good. Also, the route from here to Asuncion and other places, the general infrastructure, the roading, provision of services like the police, they're here and they're present, and they tend to do their job. So we value that, and we can see that being in a place that is valued by the country, it really has positive spin-offs for us, because we wouldn't want to be somewhere where we feel as though we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And what also results in that is that it's a very welcoming place, because many people come to this town and surrounds. There's not a feeling of, well, who are you and where did you come from? We get around here, and apart from the odd person that says hi or whatever, people are friendly here, and they just accept that, oh yeah, there's a gringo with a camera or whatever. It would be not an altogether unusual thing. I do recognise that in this country, depending on where you actually ended up, you may find yourself in situations where you might be between communities or particular ethnic groups, and it could be challenging. That's something that we have seen several times through different people that we know, and so it's not just a hypothetical. But here in Qroo, there is a really diverse mix of people. We have friends from every country that I can think of, and it seems to be a place where a lot of diverse ethnic groups come. I think as one of those groups, it's very comforting to know that we're not out on our own in that regard. It's not to say that we become a silo of Foreign Legion expats. We have got a lot of Paraguayan friends also, but it's really nice to also have that diverse mix of friends from all parts of the world. And you would not find that so much in many other parts of the country. So in terms of your social sanity, a place like this department really does check that box a lot more than many other departments or parts of the country may do. Another box that we really wanted ticked in terms of where we settled was that we wanted to be away from borders. It's our belief and observation that when you are closer to borders, you're probably more prone and at risk of falling foul to issues relating to your safety and security. In addition to that, we think that in this crazy world today, being away from borders is just a good thing in general. And as you get more into the interior of a country, particularly in a place that is reasonably well maintained and cared for by the government, well, I think that your safety and security is well served in that regard. So being away from borders was another thing that was quite high on our list of hopes when we looked at potential places to settle. So with all that being said, I could say confidently that this department is quite a sought after place, and I haven't been to all of the other departments to compare, but most definitely I do know that it's not the cheapest place to be in Paraguay. I don't know if it's the most expensive, but it's definitely not the cheapest. So the first thing I would say to anyone that perhaps hears of property prices or anything to do with Paraguay and they have some opinion or they've heard of something is that please understand that like any country, there is a very vast difference in terms of everything when it comes to this country, including property prices. So it's simply not reasonable to look at someone's opinion about, say, a property here in this department and just on the basis of price put forward the argument that, well, in Paraguay you can get such and such for that or whatever, because it's just not based in logic, either here or anywhere else in the world. I could drive within kilometres of places that I've lived in other countries and find vastly different situations in price and social conditions and every other thing. If I drove hundreds of kilometres, well, I could find places that didn't even resemble the same country. So that's a really important point that I want to make in this video, is that we are in this department for very particular reasons. We value it. And we see the value in terms of living here, including property prices, because those things that we hold very close to our hearts, they are satisfied here and we're willing to pay for that. Been here for, 14, 15 months, and in that time I have visited countless properties, made offers on several, paid money for one, spoken to scores of agents and sellers and buyers, have many friends who have done likewise. And at least in the vicinity of Qroo and surrounds, there isn't one area here that I haven't looked at quite closely. And I think that wherever you put a pin, I could probably show you at least several properties that I've looked at and inquired about and got the prices on and accepted or rejected on that basis. So I'm not claiming to be the single source of truth or to be any grand authority on anything relating to this country, but I do have a current data set that I work on, and that is the information that I've personally gathered. So I think that gives me some basis to offer at least an opinion on properties here in terms of their qualities, features and price. But like everything in Paraguay, one person's opinion can vary considerably from another's. And in the absence of reliable, codified data sets, you really are relying on people's experiences, opinion, your own opinions and gut feelings. So it is the sort of place that you really have to take the time make sure that your information's current, know that it's coming from people that you can trust, then ultimately make your own decisions. Someone made a comment about, getting some data together and doing some analysis and coming up with price points as you do in any developed country, and that's perfectly reasonable suggestion. But the issue is here in Paraguay, there's a lack of that information. Apart from the real estate companies that would hold their own data sets, there's not really any government information that at least I'm aware of that you can dig into and get some solid price points in respect to house prices. So you're left with the situation where there's no substitute for working it out yourself. And perhaps you might do that in unison with the information and advice and guidance from other people that you trust. But there's no quick solution in terms of being able to push a few buttons and get a firm price point on this place or that place. It just doesn't work like that here in Paraguay, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know. And in a recent video someone made a claim that the price that was being asked for a property was a gringo price, that being a greatly inflated price and not realistic in terms of what is being paid here in this part of the country. Well, I've got a few things to say about that. Firstly, there are indeed gringo prices here, but in terms of the gringo price, the greatly inflated price, I would contend that's more driven by foreigners who have come here and in the first instance paid too much. And then what happens is that in time, if they want to sell that property or at least sell a part of it, in order to not lose, they have to convince other incoming foreigners that the price they paid was the market price for the land in that area. And that's not uncommon at all. In fact, it's very common. So yes, there are gringo prices that are just silly and not reflective of what anyone should be paying for a property here in Paraguay. But I think that for those of us that have our heads screwed on right, it won't be too difficult to spot those even in the early parts of settling in the country. And that goes to the thing that I always say, and that is take your time. Make sure that you compile your own data set, even if it's just a few weeks worth, because even if you go to a property and just spend a few days doing a bit of analysis about some other properties that you can dig up that were sold, you'll quickly see whether it's in roughly the ballpark. So the gringo price phenomenon is definitely a thing. But in respect to the properties that I've shown on this channel, I flatly reject that claim. The claim has been made that, say, the last property that we featured on our channel could be purchased by a local here for up to a quarter of the price that the seller was asking for in that video. Well, if anyone can find a property in any sort of reasonable vicinity of Qroo for under $3,000 US per hectare, please let me know, because if that were at all possible, you would have an endless list of people that would be more than willing to pay that. There is no way, in my view, that, say for example, a property around Qroo where they're asking, say, 90 or 100 millioni, there is no chance, in my opinion, that anyone would get that for 20 or 30 millioni. And I have heard some people on YouTube, one who I know lives in a very high class European part of this department and has never actually lived in the areas that he speaks of, who has made claims about prices to that effect. Well, all I can say is if anyone can find prices even remotely close to those sort of numbers, please let me know. I'd be more than keen to come out, video those properties, video anyone that's got information about such prices, because there would be no end of people that would be very keen to buy those properties for less than $3,000 US per hectare, really. In this department, I don't think so. But if anyone can prove me wrong, well, I'd be delighted to know about it. it's just not generally going to happen. When I say that I think a price point is around, say, 90 or 100 million for a hectare in a reasonable part of this department, I'm not just speaking out of my hat. I've actually laid down money on a property that was asking around that sort of price point. So I'm not speaking hypothetically, and I'm not speaking in a way that I would tell others to do it, but not myself. But that's for you ultimately to judge. Suffice to say, in this area, the price points that I've discussed so far, I stand by in terms of my opinions about being sort of around about in the ballpark, and the door's always open, the invitation's always there. Anyone that has information that seriously rebuts or refutes that, or let's do a video, let's do several. So I hope that this video just provides some colour and substance to the issue of the locations that I'm visiting and the area that we're talking about. I'll continue to talk about this department because I think that it is wonderful. I think that those boxes, at least for us, are non-negotiable, and we don't really need to go all around this country in order to satisfy ourselves whether or not there's a better place. We've already travelled a long way as a family ourselves, and we don't need that. We're not perpetual travellers. This is not a travel blog. This is about finding a place where we can do and live a life that was not possible in the place that we previously resided. And we're lucky that we found that in the early stage of our settling into this country. I would prefer to know a lot about one department than know virtually nothing about many. And one caution that I would offer is that if you happen to come across anyone that has swept across the country and taken ample footage of regions far flung from one end of the country to the next, and in so doing offers some sort of higher insight or expertise into the validity and suitability of those areas, I would just be very cautious, because I didn't live in every area of any of the countries that I spent most of my life in. And if you were to ask me what life was like in, say, the northern part of the great southern colony that I was born in, I'd have no idea really. The life in that part of the country was totally different to where I was used to. And likewise in Paraguay. You can fly over Paraguay, drive through it, ride a motorbike through it, or even spend a night in any part of the country. It does not qualify you or even give you any real insight as to what it would be like if you were to buy property there and settle there as a foreigner. And there are several parts of this country where it just wouldn't be viable. It may look viable, and if someone were to really encourage you, you may even be convinced that that is the case. But it would be a sad and extreme mistake to make, to move to a part of Paraguay based on perhaps minimal knowledge or experience of the area, and also maybe on the advice of someone that really may have not ever spent a night there. It's not something that I would recommend by any stretch. I think that you're better off to know a lot about a particular region or department and make your assessment based on that, rather than thinking that if you were to invest in one part of a country, it's going to be like somewhere else. It doesn't work that way. Life is not that simple. Please keep continuing to add your comments, and if you do have information that could add to anything that we're covering, and absolutely if you do have information about properties that are vastly cheaper in price to any that we look at, please let us know, because that would be something I'd be very interested in learning more about. All we can do is keep on making the videos, talking about it, and hopefully it's useful to somebody out there. I think that's all I've got to say, but thank you again for taking the time to tune in. And until next time, take care. Ciao.